Welcome to Arthouse Legends, where high art and geek culture collide. I'm the MovieDude Eric, and it is now time for another MovieDude Contemplates. I know that I've been doing these a little bit more frequently, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are now in the midst of the awards season, and this is when you start to see a lot more films coming out that have a lot more to say. I'm not going to do a whole lot of these throughout the year in the sense that I only want to do these with movies that I truly have something interesting to say. Otherwise, I would prefer to have more of a conversational period. But this year specifically has been pretty amazing for me in the sense that one of my favorite filmmakers of today had two films come out this year. And the first one came out in late spring, which was Midnight Special. And recently, his second film had come out just a few weeks ago. It actually released at Cannes and kind of garnered a lot of early word of mouth, and now is seen a, a, a small but steady release schedule, which is Loving. And that filmmaker is Jeff Nichols. I found Jeff Nichols from a review that Roger Ebert had given about a film called Shotgun Stories. And after seeing that he really appreciated, even though I didn't really read the review, Shotgun Stories came on, I believe, Sundance Channel. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was so amazed by what I saw from Shotgun Stories that when Take Shelter came out, I made it an effort to go see that movie, and that became my favorite film of 2012. I honestly think that Jeff Nichols is possibly one of the greatest of the new filmmakers coming out, and to have a filmmaker come out with two films, one which was kind of his first mainstream type film, if you want to call Midnight Special a mainstream film. Uh, in my opinion, I think it's possibly his most avant-garde film that he's made to date. But then he follows that up with an awards film that definitely plays up to what you would normally think of an awards film, and to have this type of film kind of come out in the same year definitely has the remnants of something like Steven Spielberg with like in '93, where he had Jurassic Park and Schindler's List come out the same year. Now, Loving and Midnight Special are not on the same level as Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, nor is Jeff Nichols at that point where he is vying for Spielberg and taking Spielberg's position. But I will say, though, that for a filmmaker who is still within his first decade of making films and is a young filmmaker at that, I'm very excited to see what he's going to go with when in any kind of film that he's going to be moving forward, and especially after Take Shelter, who I'm going to say right now, Michael Shannon was robbed of an Oscar nomination for that film and an Oscar win, in my opinion, as well in that one. And Matthew McConaughey with Mud, again, it's one of those things that it is the reconnaissance, and Jeff Nichols does play a role in Matthew McConaughey's rise back to prominence. But at the same time, though, Jeff Nichols is a filmmaker that isn't the kind of guy that just sticks with something that he feels comfortable about. And if you've seen his films, all of his films are kind of different beasts of sorts. Shotgun Stories is a kind of hillbilly Shakespeare. It's beautiful. It's poetic. Michael Shannon. If you, all of his films have Michael Shannon in it, but Michael Shannon definitely gives a really great performance. Then you have Take Shelter, which is kind of a uh, film of faith and prophecy, and has some sci-fi elements to it. And it has a great ending, and it introduces us to Jessica Chastain. This was in that same year that she did The Help, and that she kind of made a big name for herself that year. And then we have Mud, which is more kind of on the same level as a child's fairy tale, almost kind of like To Kill a Mockingbird in a sense. And now we have Midnight Special and we have Loving. Loving obviously is telling the story of um, the interracial couple whose case went across to the Supreme Court and freed up interracial marriage and made sure that you couldn't discriminate on a marriage on the basis of race. That's definitely a historical type film. It's also one that um, is, while Nichols definitely does have films that uh, deal specifically with relationships, especially with Take Shelter, and this is no different. It is interesting because this is basing on a real life couple, and the attention to detail is something that I think is quite interesting, and I'll get more into that in just a little bit. Midnight Special is something just absolutely out there. Now, this isn't the most um, outrageous thing that Nichols has done. Take Shelter is definitely the most outrageous, but one thing that I really appreciate about Midnight Special is the fact that it's a movie that really goes for broke. All the performances are amazing and engaging, and you find yourself kind of asking who, what, where, when. Nichols plays with the audience in a way with Midnight Special that I truly am amazed by. He gives you information with that film, and he makes you ask questions, and he makes you kind of figure things out as you go along, and he never really goes out of his way to answer those questions, but just to reveal the answers in a way that is both subtle and yet at the same time still left with some ambiguity till you get to the great ending, which I definitely agree. And Michael Shannon does another great performance here, because he has the lead part and he just absolutely shines in it. Um, Loving is a movie that I can, if I were to try to recommend this to people, it would be kind of with a stipulation because Loving is a very low key movie. Most people will think that this will be something that you would normally see with kind of an Oscar movie where you have big growing speeches. This is more mumblecore than anything. It plays it very subtle. One thing I really appreciate about Loving and that I absolutely love about it is the fact that this is really about the relationship between this couple. And so it looks at this couple and it focuses entirely on this couple. So Joel Edgerton and Ruth Negga really have the entire film on their shoulders, and they both pull it off in a beautiful way, and I absolutely love it. I think Ruth Negga specifically should really be getting her best dress ready because I can definitely see her being in awards contention. Now, whether she wins anything or not, the competition is going to be pretty strong this year. I'm not going to lie. But that said, the performances are amazing. But one thing I really appreciate is that it doesn't have any major arguments and fights, and there's no massive dramatic, dramatic pull. It's the story itself is rich enough that it doesn't need any kind of false drama. even when you have like your villain, which it's not even a villain, it's more the sheriff of that kind of becomes the most antagonistic of a character in the movie. Even he doesn't have the mustache twirling. He's not out to just be bad. He's just trying to keep the order the way it is, and the way he's doing it is very subdued and very kind of matter of fact. And these are things that I really appreciate about what Loving does. And of course, it's a beautiful film to look at. And there are a couple of great scenes. Joel Edgerton has probably the best scene. It's late on in the film, and in a way, it's kind of ruined in the trailer. But at the same time, there's just the way that the context of the film, I think, just really makes it something unique and fun. Not unique and fun, but more somber and reflective, and especially if you've ever been in a relationship that has not exactly been one that people have been endorsing. It definitely has something there that I think that that the film is kind of talking about. And it's not feeling like it has to force any type of drama. But Jeff Nichols as a filmmaker is one that I wish I could get more people to see his films. Now, Mud is his most successful film so far. Like I said, it did bring back Matthew McConaughey. I think most people who've seen Mud really appreciate it. In my opinion, it's actually probably the weakest of his films. And again, it's a great film. I love it. But when you see Shotgun Stories, when you see Take Shelter, when you see Midnight Special, and even Loving, which Loving is definitely a lot more somber and more meditative than this. But at the same time, it also has this kind of ability to really get you to care about the characters in a way that Mud kind of pulls a little bit more high drama involved. Again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a good thing in my opinion, but I think Loving kind of works a little bit more in that sense. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that if you aren't familiar with Jeff Nichols is a filmmaker that you need to be paying attention to. He is a filmmaker that I think is going to be even bigger in the next decade. I think that he is a filmmaker that is going to really astound audiences and really get people excited as he grows stronger as a filmmaker. I don't think that he's going to be a showman in the sense of a Spielberg, but I think he'll actually be more of that guy that kind of wows in a quiet way, like Terrence Malick specifically, or maybe even, Zhang Yimou has become more of an action director now, but when he was doing kind of melodrama, Ang Lee, I think, or when he's doing his melodrama, again, it has a lot of that same feeling that Jeff Nichols has, and I think that for a filmmaker that plays by his own rules in that sense and is not afraid to have quiet, somber films, contemplative films, with these performances that are both capable of being very strong, but at the same time meditative. I think that this type of filmmaker deserves to have the attention and it deserves to be given a chance by mainstream audiences. And so I am going to strongly urge people to see Midnight Special, to see Loving, that's in theaters right now. Midnight Special is, I believe, at most red boxes right now, and if you get a chance, please watch Take Shelter. Take Shelter, in my opinion, is the best film that he's made, and it's one that I think that should be a classic. Yeah, if you get a chance, you're not going to go wrong. But also Shotgun Stories, and of course Mud. I can't recommend any of these more stronger than I absolutely can, because these movies are just that good. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk about Jeff Nichols as a filmmaker, and to kind of give an impression about the films. At some point, I really do want to talk about one of the films in depth. I might try to see about getting together a panel to talk about one of these films, maybe even Loving, if I can find enough people. So, what do you think of Jeff Nichols, if you are familiar with his work? Or have you seen any of the trailers? Or if he's completely new to you, would you give him a chance? Leave your comments below. I would love to hear what you have to say. But this is the MovieDude Eric, and Fiend.